everyone, and welcome to MagLife. I'm Lana.
And I'm Madison. We work at Magnolia House Shelter for Abused Persons in Waycross, Georgia.
Magnolia House helps victims of domestic violence by providing support, safety, and resources for those in need.
We created this podcast to bring awareness, educate our community, and talk honestly about the reality of abuse and the impact it has on so many lives.
Abuse is more common than many people realize, but that does not make it okay. Love should never hurt. This is MagLife. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lana.
And I'm Madison.
And this is our podcast, MagLife. This month is April, and so we wanted to talk about two very important things to our hearts, and that's going to be Child Abuse Prevention Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
At Magnolia House, we serve domestic violence victims, but sometimes child abuse comes along with that, and so does sexual assault. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we address both of these issues within our community so that our victims can get the services they need and get out of situations like that. Our community does a lot to bring awareness to both of these problems in the schools, out in the community, giving out information, making sure our providers are informed about the appropriate protocols for both of these.
So we're going to dive deep into child abuse first, and a lot of times people think that child abuse is just physical harm to a child, and while yes, that's a form of child abuse, it's not the only type that we see, and so we see emotional harm as well, neglect, and sexual assault on a child, and so those are definitely things we want to talk about today. Physical abuse is going to be anything that leaves a bruise or a mark on a child. Emotional abuse is going to be criticism of a child all the time, nagging a child, humiliating them, and really just doing psychological damage. Neglect is going to be when you do not give them the proper health care that they need, dental work, make them go to school, things like that. And then sexual is inappropriate touching or rape and things like that. So we'll dive deep into more of that once we get into sexual assault. But Madison is going to tell us really like signs to look for child abuse.
So the most common form of child abuse is actually neglect. Mm-hmm. So I do want to start with that one. So that would be not having the appropriate clothing, not having shelter, food, the essential needs for a child to thrive. That's going to be a form of neglect, and those should not be hard. Like you have your child, you must at least have these basic needs. So not meeting those is going to be a form of neglect, and that's something that as a community member we need to be on the lookout for. I know teachers are trained especially to look for those things, and also we have a lot of different nonprofits and community organizations that can help with that. If someone is experiencing poverty, there's a fine line between poverty and actual neglect. So if you're trying to get the resources, like I said, there's many community organizations that can help with that. Clothing, food, free health care, all of those things. So that's an easy way to make sure that we're getting the children what they need in our community.
Definitely.
The physical abuse is like Lana said, visible bruises, hitting, pushing. There's also strangulation, which goes into a whole nother thing, but those are going to be your physical biting. And sometimes you can see when children are experiencing physical abuse that they might act that way toward other children and think it's okay. So that's really something to be on the lookout for as well. And then the emotional abuse, we've heard many times that our domestic violence victims, they say that the emotional abuse is worse than the physical. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's not the case for children, but it's really tearing them down, and those psychological issues are what's going to carry on through your life. So if you're constantly torn down by a parent or a family member or whoever is the perpetrator, that's really going to stick with you, and you're not going to have as much self-esteem, low self-confidence. All of those are things that children who are experiencing abuse are going to show.
Some other things to kind of look for are sudden changes in behavior, children not wanting to be around certain adults or participate in things that they used to enjoy, unexplained injuries, poor hygiene, age inappropriate sexual knowledge that they just should have no business knowing at that age, extreme hunger, exhaustion, frequent absences from school with no notes, regressive behaviors like bedwetting or nightmares. And just because your child may have these does not mean that it is a form of abuse at all. It can definitely be something else going on, but it's always important to take them to the doctor, have them looked at, just to make sure that nothing is going on, because there are so many times that parents or guardians will not know that something like that's going on, and once they realize it, their child has faced so much.
And like you said, it could be underlying issues, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
Definitely.
And you may think that you know the people that are coming into your home, your friends, your family, but truthfully, you really don't. So I think you need to be cautious of everyone in order to protect our children.
And a lot of times it is people that you never think would do that it ends up happening. So definitely important to know who you're around. That kind of goes into ways to prevent child abuse. So it's just educating adults and caregivers on what to look for, when to know what to report, and things like that. Also, teaching children body safety is very important. I used to get upset with my parents because they would not let me have sleepovers and things like that, and it wasn't until I was much older that I understood why, and so I'm very thankful for that. And that kind of goes into, knowing who your kids are around, but the body safety thing is teaching your kids appropriate names for body parts. So when they come to you and they tell you something, you know exactly what they're talking about. And, we talked about that kids shouldn't know sexual knowledge. Well, that's not really what we're talking about. I think it's very important to teach your kids that that's called a penis, that's called a vagina, because if you're naming it these sweet little names, they're going to also be confused of what is happening.
Right, and then if they do try to disclose that something's happening to them, the adult that they're trying to tell may not know what they're talking about, and that could go unreported, which could have a major impact on this child's life.
Yeah.
So I agree with that, Lena. It is very important to teach your children the correct names so that they can tell whoever that trusted adult may be, and that's a preventative measure as well. Making sure that your child has a trusted adult, whether it is at school, whether it's a coach, a family member, you as a parent, that's going to be their person that they can go to. And we shouldn't be offended if it's not the mom or the dad, as long as they have someone. And that goes along with educating adults about this matter too, so that the adult can use that information that was given and use it for our children's protection.
I think another big thing is some kids are known to lie or exaggerate things, especially younger children. And so they might come to a trusted adult and be like, hey, something happened to me last night, and that adult just brushes it off with like, oh, they imagined that, or, that's probably a lie because they've lied before. But like, you should always 100% take that child seriously. Because if you don't report it and something is actually going on with that child, it can be life changing for that child. Like, no child should ever have to go through abuse. So I think it's very important to also when we're teaching these things and through the podcast, to just make sure that adults know that when a child comes to you, it needs to be a completely safe space. It needs to be like, okay, I'm listening. Tell me exactly what happened, and go from there.
And DFACS, I think, sometimes gets a bad rap in the community, especially because they are having to go into homes sometimes. But they take every case serious. They investigate every case. So when you do report this, they're going to take it, they're going to look into it, and make sure there's no neglect, physical harm, anything like that going on. And if there is, then they're going to work with the families to see how they can improve this, improve the family dynamic, or help the child out of that situation. So some people are scared to call DFACS, but that is literally their job, is to help children out of child abuse situations and to see a better life. So reporting that to them is going to be the first thing you need to do after this child has disclosed. But also, we're not owed a follow-up from them. We just have to trust that they are doing their job and that it'll be taken care of, and hopefully we'll see a change in the child's life after that.
Yes. So I wanted to throw some statistics out there for you. So at least 1 in 7 children will experience abuse or neglect annually. That is very high.
Yes.
I mean, I know that you used to be a school teacher. Think about 1 in 7 of your kids. And you probably had a classroom full of 30.
Yes. So it is more common than we think. And it doesn't always it's not always reported. Like, you see major cases in the news, but 1 in 7, I mean, that's probably a daily occurrence that they're getting calls for these kids. And we're not always going to hear about it, but it's important that we take these preventative measures to make sure that that number is going down in the future.
And there's definitely probably more than 1 in 7. It's just that those are the cases that the CDC,
knows about.
Like, there was actual reports, and only 2% of child abuse cases are false.
So it's worth reporting.
Yes, very much. 90% of children that are abused, it is by someone they know. Usually a parent, a guardian, or somebody that is very close to them, whether that be a coach or a community member or somebody that the family has trusted with their child.
So I think that goes back to talking with your children about kind of what the signs are, if an adult is touching you inappropriate, if they're making inappropriate comments, what to do, where to go, have that safe person, because like you said, it is people that they know. So kids should not feel scared to tell their parents or whoever that trusted adult is that this is going on.
For definite. I also wanted to get into, now computers and technology and AI are such a big thing, that you also need to be monitoring to what your children are on. You may not be able to listen in on every video game that they play or know what they're doing 24/7, but it's important to, like you said, talk to your kids, ask them questions, know who they're hanging out with. They have all these safety measures on our phones now where that can allow you to not download an app without your parents' passcodes and things like that. So it's really important to take those measures, because I do know that a lot of times on apps and other things, there are predators that are on there, especially in video games. There's chat boxes now, secret messaging rooms, things like that they're there to abuse children. And so I just think that's really important to also be monitoring your kids on that.
Yes, I like that you brought that up, because kids are getting phones younger and younger and younger, and that's not always a good thing, especially if they're not monitored. So there's so much on the internet, even scrolling through Facebook. It's like random things that pop up and you're like, oh, like, I didn't even want to see that as an adult. I definitely wouldn't want my child to see it. So being mindful of what apps are on their phone and using those safety restrictions is going to be key to preventing them from running into these people who are literally preying on children, and then convincing them to maybe meet up later or convincing them to send money or send nude pictures. Those are just some of the ways that these predators get to these children through social media and the games. They can have full-on conversations with strangers across the world.
I think we also have to realize that these are kids that we're talking about. Their minds are not like our minds where we see danger and we, like I'm very aware of my surroundings and that, but little kids aren't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they think they're chatting with somebody on a kid video game, they think they're probably chatting with a kid. And that's what these abusers have and predators, they know what to do. They know exactly what to say, how to act. So, I mean, it's just really scary.
Yeah, and they get very creative with how they get to these children. Fake profiles, fake pictures, usernames.
And now that AI is a thing, I mean, you just don't really know what to believe anymore.
Mm-hmm. AI can actually change someone's voice too.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they're talking on video chat or anything like that, they can make it sound like a little kid. And sometimes that could be the first step into them, hey, let's meet up at the park. Hey, and then from then on out, I mean, that's just so dangerous. So please be mindful of what your kids are on. That is an easy precaution to take, and then have those conversations with them about internet safety as well.
Mm-hmm. I did want to put in there, who can you report to? So you always call 911 if you were in immediate danger. Another place that you can contact is local law enforcement, Child Protective Services, DFACS. There's also a National Child Abuse Hotline, and that is 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Or the Georgia Abuse Hotline is 1-855-GEORGIA-CHILD. And then we also have Satilla Advocacy. That's in our, for anybody that's local watching this podcast, they also are over our 6 counties as well. So if you know of anybody going through child abuse or you need a place to report it, they're also a place that you can call.
Also for sexual assault, which
Yes.
brings us into our next topic, because April is Sexual Assault Month as well.
Yes.
So, like I said, our victims experience this too, and sometimes they don't want to report, but I think it is important to, as soon as something like that happens, Satilla Advocacy is there. They are trained professionals to handle these situations and get them the services they need.
Yes. So child abuse prevention and sexual assault really go hand in hand, which I think is, I don't exactly know why, if that's like why they're both in April, but it makes sense because they do go such hand in hand. A lot of people think that sexual assault is just rape, and it's not. It's unwanted touching, groping, coercing somebody, threatening somebody to do sexual acts. It can also be in person or online. Like, there's just so many things that go into sexual assault that I don't think people realize. Sexual assault can also be strangulation, things like that. I mean, and I definitely did not realize all of that until I started working here, but it's just been really like eye-opening that so many things like that can go on.
And the strangulation, it's important to go ahead and get checked for that as well, because it prevents the oxygen from getting to the brain and can have long-lasting effects on your brain.
You know, people can have strokes or blood clots weeks after an event, months after an event. So it's definitely very important to, even if you don't know if during your attack that happened, it's always, like you said, it's better to be safe than sorry. Just get that checked. And bruises do not show up immediately either.
Yeah, and it's important to go as soon as it happens, if you can. That way, if you do plan on pressing charges or maybe getting a temporary protective order or anything of that nature, they have pictures, they have the evidence. So the sooner you can get in, obviously the better, and it's going to help your case so that you don't have to face that perpetrator again.
Definitely. Another thing is, a lot of times sexual assault is, I think we watch in movies and TV shows that sexual assault a lot of times happens by a stranger, and it is normally not a stranger. It is normally somebody that they are very close with. Either you're in a relationship with that person. You can also be married to that person. A lot of times people think that you can't get raped because that's your husband or your wife, but you can. And so those are just definitely things to think about.
Also, there's a kind of a stigma around sexual assault, which is why I feel like some people don't report. I know it was kind of a common thing, especially when I was in college. This would happen to young girls and they would not report. And so that is an issue because they were scared of shame. Yeah. And they were scared of
believing them.
Right, they were scared of what people would say about it. And I've heard before that what were they wearing? What did they have on? You know? And I think that is so just downplaying the situation. Also, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It can happen in a nightgown. It can happen in jeans. I mean, anything. There was actually a display I saw, and it had sexual assault victims' clothing of what they were wearing at the time. And it made me cry because there was a little girl in a little princess dress. Her dress was hanging up. There was jeans and a t-shirt on one of them. There was like a long nightgown. One was a turtleneck and some pants. So that just goes to show you that these victims, real victims, had these articles of clothing on, and it still happened to them. So it's not like, oh, they were asking for it because this is what they're wearing. Nobody's asking for it. Nobody's asking to be abused. No one's asking to experience sexual assault ever. This is a situation that no one had planned on being in, and it has long-term effects on them, and it takes a lot of therapy and services.
And I think just what we say about domestic violence, like, it does not just happen to lower income families, like the stigma that surrounds it. I mean, this can happen to the very, very wealthy people. It can happen to leaders in your community, the prominent families, like all these things. Like, it can happen to anybody. And I just think that once this stigma goes away about it, which is another reason why we're doing this podcast, is to educate people to understand that it's okay to come out and tell your story. Nobody's here is going to judge you. We're here to help. That's why we do our jobs every day. That's why we're making this podcast. And so it's just really sad that so many people don't report because they're so scared that they're not going to be believed.
And I feel like a lot of the stigma comes from people who may not have experienced this in their life.
Oh, definitely.
And it shouldn't take you experiencing something to have empathy for somebody. So reducing the stigma, educating children, educating adults, making sure we as a community know the resources so that we can refer people when needed. And then also we have so many community organizations, like I said earlier, that are trained professionals in these things. So you don't have to just stand by because there's nobody there. Go ahead and report it and get the help you need from trained professionals. But I think stigma is a huge thing across the board in any social services. Even mental health month is coming up. There's a lot of stigma around that too, so reducing that, and that's teaching children at a young age to be kind to everybody. And honestly, sometimes we need to learn from our children more than we do other adults. So just know that you never know what someone is going through. Just be mindful of that, have empathy. If they're willing to share that information with you, that should honestly mean a lot to you, because it does take a lot to come out and be honest about these things that have happened.
A couple ways to prevent sexual assault is just, if it is a young child, like I said, teaching consent and teaching body anatomy very early can help. Believe people when they speak up, because these things are, like, silence protects abusers. I said that in the first podcast. Things are not going to change unless people start speaking up. They're not. That's another reason why we're doing this podcast. Like, there are probably like, the statistics that I'm about to read, there are so many more people than we realize, but they're just, like you said, they're too scared of shame and things like that to come out. But creating safe workplaces, schools, community events, like, just knowing that when you go to things, like, just always be like, aware of your surroundings is what I'm trying to say. When you go places, have bystander intervention. If you see something, say something. If you see somebody that you look like is not in a great situation, help them. Or call 911 to help them. If you were out at a bar and you see somebody slip something in somebody's drink, or you see a girl or a guy that looks like they've had too much to drink and they probably don't need to be left alone, help. I mean, or at least call somebody that can help.
That could have been a preventative measure.
Mm-hmm. Know about consent. Know that it is always okay to say no. And if you have already done something with somebody, does not mean that halfway through it you cannot say no, because you can. You always have the power to say no, and so know that. Also know that if you've drank that night, or if you've done anything that you're scared that people are going to be like, well, it's my fault, it's not your fault. It will never be your fault that you got sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking for it. And then again, just to kind of help your children's or your teens or anything like that, just monitor their social medias, monitor who they're talking to, who they're chatting with, things like that. I think that those are just great preventative measures for both Child Abuse and Sexual Awareness Month. Another thing that I wanted to say was, I did a training not too long ago called Darkness to Light, and if you go on their webpage, it's www.d2l.org. They teach you about child sexual abuse. And there are so many statistics, so many ways to help parents or guardians or coaches or community members just know more signs, know how to report things and what to do in certain situations. So I think that is really important. There's so many other online resources as well, that if you are a parent or guardian and want to learn more about that, that's just a great place to start.
And Magnolia House and Satilla Advocacy, they're at a lot of, and DFACS as well, they're at a lot of community events, and they are giving out information. So please stop by their booths, get the information. You never know when you're going to have something like this come up in your life. So being prepared and knowing how to report, knowing how to help is very important.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that we covered both of these topics today. April is Child Abuse Awareness Month and Sexual Assault Prevention Month, so making sure that we're getting the word out was our point of this podcast. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Magnolia House or Satilla Advocacy, as well as DFACS, and they'll be happy to speak with you.
Well, thank y'all so much for tuning in with us today. Just be on the lookout for our next podcast. We got some great things coming up that we can't wait to share with you.
Thank you.